You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal. And this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome. You. What's up? What's up, everybody?
I don't know.
We forgot what we're doing. We missed 1 week of recording and we totally forgot what to do. Everything is all out of sorts. Everything's out of whack. Sean doesn't know what to do with his hands. We're in a bad way here.
Suntan lotion is good for me. You protect me. You know what that's from?
No.
Billy Madison.
Huh.
Oh, the sun tries to burn me, but you won't let it, will you?
Very nice.
So what else is there to say?
There's words. You wouldn't believe this, but there's basically an unlimited amount of words.
Interesting.
Yeah, thanks to the intervention of Yahweh at the Tower of Babel, now there's just unlimited words.
True. That's true. That's true. Wasn't that undone by the Holy Spirit?
Only in certain situations, apparently.
And
actually, I don't know, because I shouldn't say it. I shouldn't say it. I'll just leave that one be.
Well, no, I have no idea what you were going to say. You can say it later, I guess.
I was just going to make a joke about tongues, how it's just nonsensical babble. And
Babel. I don't know.
It was just a joke I was going to make, but
yeah,
I decided not to. People are pretty easily offended about stuff like that,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I don't know.
You don't know, huh?
That's one of those things that I haven't really spent a ton of time thinking about. I mean, it is one of the gifts, of course, of the Spirit. But what does it mean? What does speaking in tongues actually mean versus what has the Pentecostal traditions said that it is? I don't know. I don't know. I think that Paul does make it pretty clear that it would be that the gifts are meant to edify. So like he says something like, I speak in tongues more than any of you fools.
He did say that.
But I'd rather
little braggadocious, if I say so myself. But
yeah, he had a tendency to do that, didn't he? But he said, I'd rather yous all prophesy, because it edifies the whole body. So, you know what? I guess if you were going to be seeking the gifts, I'm not saying don't seek all of them, but I feel like there was an overemphasis on speaking in tongues in my own background.
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, tongues was for whatever reason seen as like the evidence of, that was the key there, it's the evidence. So it's like, if you're not speaking in tongues, you don't have it.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is just like auxiliary, like extra, but you got to speak in tongues or you don't have it, you know? So that's
Right.
why the emphasis seemed to be on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of at a place in my life where I'm like, does this make any sense at all? No? Okay, well then I don't care. So I haven't really spent a whole lot of time studying it or anything either because I just am to the point where I don't think it makes any sense. I think it's kind of silly. And so I just left it there. Maybe someday we'll pick it up again.
Mm.
If we choose that for a topic, maybe we'll do a little study on it.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to um, the silly.
Right? I know you're not. Drives me crazy.
Mhm.
I kid.
I'm fine with things being a little silly. Because honestly, I think we're silly.
Yeah, I mean, I've just kind of worded that trying to be intentionally funny, but I really am like I'm kind of sensitive right now in particular, just where I'm at in my life. I'm kind of sensitive to things that I don't think make any sense, but that, like literally, if you didn't have a couple of Bible verses to where you were like, well, I don't know, the Bible says it, then you wouldn't even consider it. It just doesn't make any sense. And like I'm kind of to that point in my like I don't think you know what I mean. Like you know what I'm trying to say. Even if you even if you disagree with me, do you know what I'm trying to say? To where it's like in no rational way would this make any sense, but you do have a couple Bible verses, so you got to try to. This apparently is a thing. You know, like I don't really care right now. I mean,
Yeah. I guess it depends on how many. you know, I mean, if there's something that is a consistent, I do think that we should focus more on things that are like consistent themes throughout the whole thing. But it seems like we tend to like focus on stuff that are what's the phrase, like major and the minors, like we're focused on like little small
yeah,
things like that that honestly probably don't even matter, and other things that like, I mean, just think about it, all the time spent by folks trying to like discern the second coming and
it's
the
exactly what I was thinking. The
rapture, and
rapture, yeah.
like how much ink has been spilt on people trying to predict things and people talking about, like, there's just a constant outflow of books on the subject that are just, they're all built on a false premise.
That is sort of a funny thing about sort of where I got to with like that topic in particular, like the rapture, because it was even before I had kind of like studied the history of it and the like. I just kind of got to a point where I was like, who cares? Like, no one ever teaches that one of the prerequisites for you being in the rapture is you have to believe the right things about it. So it's like, well, who cares? Like, what does it matter if I believe in it or not? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Like I sort of feel the same way with like a gift, like speaking in tongues. Like to me, it doesn't make any sense. To me, I think it's silly, but I'm here. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna beg and plead to like speak gibberish or whatever. But like if it's a real thing, I'm willing. You know, like I'm here and willing and able. Like you know what I'm trying to say? Like I'm not fighting it or anything. Like
Yeah. At least not in a conscious way.
right. I mean, that's all I can account for is my conscious decisions. But I mean, I would say that it's sort of the same kind of theme as like the one of the um, atheist. Actually, I think it's one of their harder arguments to deal with, the divine hiddenness. Right? It's sort of like the I'm here. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of how I feel with like the tongues or and any of those gifts of spirits. Of like, even if I don't understand it, it's like okay, like maybe I don't believe in it, but prove me wrong. Like I'm here, spirit. Like I'm not like gonna be like, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but I don't think I don't know. I haven't. To your point, I haven't done a whole heck of a lot of study on it because I don't really. It's not important to me right now.
Yeah, it's definitely not high on my list of things to study in depth. I have bigger fish to fry, you might say.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it all comes in this topic folds right back into that. It really folds into everything where I've been recently is with this Bible as a whole. What is it? How how is it being used and how should it be used? What is it? Who, like all those different questions, because that factors into what I was just saying about like certain things like tongues, where I don't think like without certain scriptures, it's not like somebody's just going to be like, oh, this is a real thing, right? Like I feel like you have certain scriptures and then it's like, well, this is a thing. So, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. But that all factors into like, what is the Bible? How do you use it? Is this like the truth, like this is everything that there is contained between these two covers, the back cover and the front cover, like all information? Because if so, I don't know, but I think there's a lot to consider there. Like, but literally everything factors into that as far as the Christian tradition goes, or my experience with the Christian tradition in the more conservative evangelical
Right.
strands of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why it's where my mind is really on all the time. Basically, any time I'm thinking about theological stuff, that's sort of where my mind's been lately.
Yeah. Um, I've thought about the Bible.
Me and Imaginary, you had a pretty good argument about it this morning when I was running.
Really? What did I say?
I don't remember now.
I think you do. um, yeah, I would like to know what your imaginary version of me had to say about it, because I don't know myself. I mean, it has become. I do think it's just a sort of complex thing, but then I also am like, yeah, no crap. Like, why wouldn't it be a complex thing?
Right.
Like, why would the scriptures not be something that even their existence is? But like, if it is the word of God, like if it is God's word to us, like just think about the types of discussions that we have about God. Like, it's so complex to think about. So like, it's in a similar way. I think it's hard to talk about what the Bible is and how you're supposed to view it, and how some people have used it, and all of those things apply to God himself. Not that I'm putting the Bible on the same level as God, but I'm trying to just making the point that, like, if this is viewed as, if we're going to view this as um, the Word of God in any sense, then I think it shouldn't be surprising that our relationship to it would be complex and not so easy to. It shouldn't be plain. Just like the reading of it shouldn't be plain. I don't think it should be super cut and dry, like, oh, well, this is clearly inerrant and infallible. And like, there's just, I think that it's a more complex discussion for sure. Just like any discussion that involves God.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with any of that. I think my problem comes into the fact that we will say that, but then treat it as if it's not a conversation, or treat it as if it's not complex. And that's where my struggles come in.
I really do think, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I do think that I think that the church as a whole, like, me and you aren't the only ones that have deconstructed all this stuff. Me and you aren't the only ones that have um, had to rethink our relationship to the scriptures and all of that. Like, this is happening everywhere, and I think it's for the better. And I think that what we're discovering is that we have been really poor readers of the scripture, and we have taken for granted certain things like that, and like even used, like what you're talking about. Like, I think that is a real thing. Like, I think that we have talked about the Bible in ways that have been too simplistic, and have put it in maybe an improper place. Um, but again, all of that's hard to talk about because I do think that the scriptures hold a high place. Like I'm not trying to like I don't want to put the scriptures in a lower. I don't want to like put them in a lower position than they should be. But what position should they be? You
Right.
know, that's the question. And I one thing that I've noticed that's become even more clear to me is that even our literal readings are not literal readings. Like we've used the language a ton of like l- people reading too literally, or and I think maybe to say reading plainly is closer, but even that's I think lacking because we've used that kind of, or I have used for sure that language of like a plain reading before, but like the an actual literal reading would be actually taking into account the historical context, the cultural context, the audience to whom it's written, the genre of writing that it is, like what, is it apocalyptic? Like is it what's the genre? And again, who is it written to? The audience, and then you have to have a close reading of like looking like this as we've been going through some of these like side studies with the Bible Project, like it has really kind of opened up my eyes even more to see that like man, we've been such terrible readers of the scriptures, and like there's really is like a lot of really cool things that to me seem to witness to the inspiration of the scriptures that we just completely miss because we aren't reading them carefully. We aren't looking for, we aren't, we're so far removed from the culture and from the time, and we don't read enough of, we don't read enough of our Jewish brothers and sisters, the ones that are trying to carry on the traditions of how they read their own scriptures, like we haven't done the work of trying to actually read them literally before we like that. For myself, speaking for myself, I feel like I've my issue with the Old Testament in particular, and like all of the things that are like, if they don't cause you trouble, then I don't know what your trouble is, but you have some sort of trouble of your own if there's texts in the Old Testament that don't trouble you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like there
Actually,
those
I actually think the New Testament troubles me more currently, but
I actually was thinking that exact thing the other day, but like this started for me as
yes,
I used to have a much harder problem with the Old Testament than the New.
exactly. I would echo that. Yeah.
And so it was, I think though that in learning how to read those scriptures more faithfully, maybe you might even say the way that they were intended to be read, does help clear up actually a lot of that to where it's my relationship with the Old Testament has become a much easier one than like some of the epistles, some of the stuff that's in the New
Right.
Testament outside of the Gospels.
Yeah, that's really is my like why I said that I have a harder time with the New Testament now. Like for me, the Old Testament now is stories. Like what's the point of a story? Like we don't get caught up. I always use the example of the tortoise and the hare. Like we don't get caught up on the intricacies of like, well, how did the tortoise and the hare communicate to where they organized this track meet together in the wilderness? Like
Right.
we don't have that conversation because we understand it's a story. Like we're reading the story for what it is and trying to find the point in the story. And like that's how I read the Old Testament. Like I don't get caught up in all these sort of things that to me like they would matter if we're talking about like this is an AP report on a history of that actually happened. Like I think it's just a story that's meant to tell a theological point, like or make a theological point, or you know what I mean. So like
Yeah.
I don't those things don't trouble me, but we that approach doesn't work for epistles. That's not what's happening there. you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah, I know that in the past when I had read the Old Testament and had those problems with it, I had tried to solve that issue by reading more allegorically. And I do think that there's a need for that. And I actually do think we should be reading allegorically a lot more than we do. But but I also think that one of the reasons I looked for allegorical readings more is because I didn't know how to read it literally. Which sounds weird because like we've always thought about reading it literally as like just reading the words on the page and
right,
whatever your the first like inclination of what they might mean that comes to you. Well, that's the literal reading.
right.
But that's not actually the literal reading is like doing the actual work of trying to figure out, or the best you can anyway, what the author is trying to say through this story. You know, like the tortoise and the hare. You just like there is a point to that story.
Yeah, I actually heard this is so I don't know if you may have heard of him, probably not though. His name's Jackson Crawford. He is a so he's one of the like foremost experts in modern day on like the Norse myths. So like the Poetic Edda and some of the Norse mythology. He's one of the like more well-known
Hmm.
scholars of the Norse myth. And I actually came across this video of his. It's an old video of his, like years and years and years old, but he was talking about a he doesn't tend to try to propagate an allegorical reading of the Norse myths. Not that there aren't that you can't do it. Obviously, you can, like with any myth, like literally anything. You can allegorize your own literal experience of life. You know what I mean? Like, but that's his point is that like he doesn't think that as the scholar and the interpreter, it's his place to tell you what the story means. Like it means something. Me and you can read the same story and get something totally different from it, right? So like that's what he's saying is like, and that's what I think is kind of cool about the allegory, and that's why I sort of hesitate to even say, even though I get what you're saying, I sort of hesitate to say like trying to get to what the author was saying because I don't think that's a bad thing, but also I don't like we don't know what the author was trying to say, but what's it saying to you? You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know that there is a meaning to it. Um, Actually, I think that's part of why the Bible is so interesting, even though it doesn't hold the place for me that it once did. I still find it so interesting, is because we can still, people like me and you who live thousands of years after these texts were written can still find meanings that are applicable to our life today in them. You know what I mean? But that it probably is totally different than what the original guy meant because it's a totally different world. Then we might as well be living on a different planet. Like 2,000 years ago in Palestine, or 3,000 years ago in Palestine, compared to modern day United States of America in 2025. Like it's a different planet. You know what I mean? Like it probably did mean something different to them, but we still find the meaning in that. And to me, that's where like I that's what's so interesting about the text to me.
Mm, yeah, I don't know. I I tend to think that there's more universal truth in there that is it that transcends all the time, that the distance between us and the original authors, you know?
I mean, I'm sure that there is like some let's see how I want to say this. Some truths, despite the difference in time and region, I don't think that's necessarily unique to the Bible either. Obviously, like I think that that's just any kind of literature experience. Is like we can find universal truth in there. You know what I mean? Like the tortoise and the hare again. That example, the moral of the story can be universally true for somebody 2,000 years ago as it was today. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I do think that there's some truths that transcend time itself.
Yeah, and I really do think that most of those stories are that though. I think that what the authors are trying to portray more often than not just are that. Like I think that in one way or another, most of them are trying to point to the fact that we we're screwed up and we need help. And like
Jeez. See, I don't know. I don't know because again, I read it as a conversation. You know what I mean? Like so,
Well, that's part of it.
but I mean that's and it could just be the language plus my history with the Bible and the way it's been taught to me in the past. You know what I mean? But what I hear is no, there's the in place irreplaceable truth is found in each and every one of these passages and every one of these stories. And I'm like, nah, I mean, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Jonah and Ruth are saying two different things. They're not both saying the same universal truth. Now, like you may be able to find a uh point to it and say what they're saying is wrong and what they're saying is right, so therefore it's all right, like, or whatever, however you want to work that. But like I don't know, like to me it's just a conversation. There's some things in there that are true, there's some things in there that miss the boat. I mean, I don't know how else to say it really.
Well, but here's the thing, though. I think that I think really, I'm becoming more and more convinced that in a lot of cases like that, the author knows that.
Yeah, see, I don't think, I don't know, I'm not there, but I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like I don't ever want to approach these texts thinking assuming that I have the moral high ground, that I know better than these people do, that I know God better than they did, that I'm somehow more in tune with the spirit that dwells within me than they were. Like I don't want to just assume that because I live here now and they don't, they lived then, that they were somehow less enlightened, that they had were less inspired, like that I have a more inspired reading than they had an inspired writing. I don't ever want to make those types of assumptions going into it. And I do think that more and more what I've discovered is that there's so many details in these texts that if you're actually paying attention to them, if you have if you dedicate the time to develop the skills to actually notice the the things, and I'm not there yet. It is something that I'm trying to work on, but it like actually learning how to apply these things is hard. That's part of it. That's part of the, unfortunately, most of the American evangelical church, I don't think has, oh, at least I'll just speak for myself. Hasn't been taught how to read these things well. I don't know how to read the scriptures this way. But I think that if we could learn how to read them that way and recognize those things that are pointing us, like these hints and clues in the story that actually let you know, like, hey, dummy, I know this sounds bad. That's the point. Like, yeah, as you're reading this story and you're like, oh, this guy's whoever wrote this is just a freaking jerk, and they obviously don't know God. They obviously don't know God the way I know God through Jesus. Like, they're full of crap. Like, I think that it it's very possible that as we're reading through and we have those kinds of thoughts, it may be that they're like, yeah, you just need to pay attention. That's what I'm saying. But you're not picking up on it, through the details that are in these stories. And I don't know. Maybe I'm full of it. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's whatever. Like, to me, it sounds like you're reading in a lot of things in there that you want to be in there, from my perspective. But that's,
I mean, it's possible. I mean,
I definitely wouldn't, like, I didn't. I know that you didn't mean it like this, but I definitely wouldn't say like, "Well, I know God better than these people." Like that's kind of a bullshit way of framing it, I think, in my opinion. Like I'm
well,
taking two opposing views and saying these two people are saying two different things. They both can't be right. Like I don't think that's me saying, "Well, I know God better than you people." Like to me that's kind of bull. Like
well, it wasn't just that though. There was other, like you said, yeah, it doesn't matter.
but yeah.
There was, I mean, you said some other things there other than you weren't just saying that like these two voices are competing.
Right.
You said something else about like I think that this person was just wrong or whatever, and
Yeah.
like I don't remember the exact wording that you used, but like
Missed the boat. think it's that what I said.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, so I don't want to assume that they missed the boat without really trying to learn how to read these scriptures well, and then doing the work of actually like reading it, and then maybe I'd be proven wrong. I don't know, but I'm not ready to
Right.
say that just yet. And I didn't mean to say it in a way that was like attacking
I know
you.
it. And that's why I
But
said, like, I know that you didn't mean it like this. And so I was like, I'm not like angry at you or anything, but it did sort of come across as sort of like an apologetic of like a deflection tool to like make me see, like, act like I'm trying, like I have a superiority complex or something. Like, obviously not. I don't know anything, but like,
I mean, I'm more talking to myself because I have felt like that before.
yeah,
That has been my mindset in the past before. Like I have, like that was a big part of my deconstruction actually was like I felt like I was clearly able to read this the literal reading of this passage from the Old Testament makes God out to be a freaking monster that's not worthy of worship and we should actually reject that God.
right,
Like I have been in a place where I've thought that and thought that like well I obviously have a higher moral standard than these people do. Like I've thought that myself.
yeah,
So it's not I wasn't necessarily I mean your comment did prompt it,
right.
but it wasn't meant to be like a personal jab at you.
You know what? We can fight.
I guess we can. I've been on overtime and I'm too tired.
Yeah, I'm not much of a fighter anymore.
Really, I just want to go to sleep.
I'm pretty good. I just drank a pot of coffee, so
An entire pod, eh?
yeah. Well,
My
except for
word.
what's left of my glass there or my cup, but yeah, I don't know, man. It is kind of funny as you were talking what was coming to my mind, and this is something that I've thought a lot about when I was running. I'm sure you've thought about this a lot too, actually. It's just how in recent time, it's become more obvious in recent time, but probably has always existed to a certain extent, how differently we can see things and how clearly it makes sense to you, your perspective does, and how clearly my perspective makes sense. But there's two completely different perspectives that cause this sort of like, you know, chasm, not chasm, between like
It's a
our two,
throwback.
between our two perspectives, or point of views. It's just really interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, I think that all that stuff I said about the Old Testament has given me a kind of a fresh um, perspective on the Old Testament, but it has actually made things much harder for the new.
I would agree.
But
But I think that comes back down to like the whole question that I started with was like, what is this book collection of writings and how do you use it? You know what I mean? Because even addressing like what I said about the Old Testament with like approaching these as like stories, these are just stories like meant to tell a point. Like that's okay. That kind of eases some of the atrocious things that you can read or what's things that seem atrocious, right? Like we just got done in Sunday school reading First Samuel, which took like about 9 months. It seemed like, but one of the recurring themes of First Samuel, which seemed to come up quite often, people seemed to notice it quite a bit, was God commanded Saul to genocide the Amalekites, and the fact that he actually didn't do it caused him problems for the whole rest of his life. If he would have just genocided all the Amalekites like God told him to, he wouldn't have had all these problems in his life. That was the recurring theme that kept coming up. Like, if you take that literally, like everything that you're reading as like literal history, not a story meant to tell you like a theme, but an actual historical story, that seems pretty bad. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's hard to deal with, but like that is glossed over in sort of and I don't mean glossed over in a bad way. I just mean I'm trying to say it's like eased or softened if you don't take it literally, if you just think it's just a story, right? Like it's not that big a deal. This is just a story. Um, but I still have never figured out how you handle that in the New Testament, right? Like these epistles. This is um and it's probably just there's probably people out there, depending on what background they're from, that like don't have a problem with this. But you have to understand the way that I have had the Bible taught to me and ingrained within me is like, this is what it says. This is what it. There's no questions about it. You know what I mean? Like Paul wrote this epistle saying women shouldn't preach in church. Therefore, women shouldn't preach in church. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what else you do with that other than I guess we have a conversation on whether he was right or to kind of more of what you seemed to be getting at a while ago, which was like he's saying what he doesn't mean, but he's trying to get you to think through it for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, or I think that's what you were kind of saying. Um, I don't know. I don't know what you do with those. It's a
Yeah.
long-winded way of saying I don't know.
Yeah. Um, it's it's really, I mean, these were letters written to specific people, so it does get hard to like. I mean, in some cases, you're literally reading someone else's mail. In those cases, you know what I mean. So it's like, it is kind of like how much of that is applicable because they are writing even more so than like if we're going to read the Old Testament more parabolically, you know what I mean? Like if this is just because this was addressing a specific group of people in a specific small church community with specific issues that needed to be addressed because they were actually happening in this community, how much of that should be applicable to all churches of all time?
Right.
I don't know. More and more, I have become pretty uncomfortable saying that a lot of those things that are said are things that, especially if it's obviously something that's very specific to this group of people, like it becomes pretty hard to be like, well, this is obviously this applies to all of us for all of time. I don't know. It does get
Because then
it's
you have to wrestle with the question of like, well, if it's not applicable to us, then why is it included?
yeah. I mean, I think you would have to take that Second Timothy 3, is it 3:16 or 3:15? All scriptures
It's
God breathed.
3:16, yeah. 2 Timothy 3:16.
All scripture is God breathed and profitable. Like I do think that, which that's written about the Old Testament actually,
Right.
but but I mean, I do think that like there are things we can learn from these epistles. I just don't know that we have to apply every single bit of it literally to our own context.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're not useful.
Right. I mean, and that's sort of reminded me of a Ramdas quote. Big surprise there, right? But he says that everybody's the guru if you know how to listen, right? So it's sort of like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I believe, I mean, there's profitable things in all writing. Sometimes it's don't do this. So and I'm not saying that about the Bible. I'm just mean in any sort of writing. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it's just a bad example. Don't do this, but like it's the
Right.
same with the person, right? Anybody can be the guru if you know what to listen. Sometimes the lesson that you learn from that person is don't act like that person. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. I
that's the
think.
point of what he's trying to say there. And so perhaps that's a thing. I don't know. I actually think that verse in particular is an interesting one. That could be a whole topic in and of itself. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
It's actually a made up word. I don't know, like, or the most recent research I did on it. It's like when I say a made up word, I don't mean it's like a nonsense word. I mean it's like not found in any other literature. Like that's literally seems like the writer of that epistle sort of created a word.
You talking about the
Yeah.
Theonostos?
So it's like it's not like we have a trove of literature that we can comb through and be like, oh, that's exactly how we would define this. This is what this means. You know what I mean? Like it's like a one-off thing.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Because I mean, that's one that verse in particular, people will point to and be like, "See, it's infallible. That's what that means." Well, like that's not what it says. That's not what it means to me. Like
Yeah.
to me, I hear God breathed, and I think of it makes me call back to Genesis. Right? God breathed into man and made man a living soul. It just means that man's not perfect. Man isn't infallible, but man is God breathed. Like to me, it just means it's a sort of a living thing, right? Which I see in the inspiration, like what we were talking about earlier, that me and you 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years later from some of these writings are still getting good stuff out of them. Like that's living. That means it's unending, right? Like the meaning of these texts can go on and on and on. Whereas some writings, they're applicable for their time and place, and then they just fade into obscurity because they're no longer applicable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I don't know. But anyway, all of this come up just because it's almost really hard to talk about anything else because a lot of what we talk about is based on what the Bible says. And like, if I don't even know how to read the Bible or what it is or how to use it or what I even think about it anymore, it's hard to talk about anything else, you know?
Yeah. It's
I don't know. It especially makes it weird for like, it's not weird in really my day-to-day life. It's not that big a deal to me, but it is weird in like trying to think through like having theological conversations or like how like interacting and you know what I mean? Like how like do I want to go to Bible study? And like, you know, I could have stayed last night. I hadn't eaten supper yet. Kelly hadn't even been home. She literally pulled in the park driveway, came in, me and Finn got in the car. She didn't even come in the house. We drove to the church to hand out food. Like we could have stayed, but like why? You know, like if I don't even know what I think about this book, like essentially what a Bible study is a book club, like, and I don't even know what I think about it. Like, why am I going to miss? Instead, I went and ate supper with my family. We sat down at a Mexican restaurant and had a great dinner together. We come home. I give my son a bath, put him in his PJs. He laid up on me and cuddled up to me and fell asleep in my lap. Like, it was a good night. You know what I mean? Like, if I wasn't where I was with the Bible, maybe that night doesn't happen that way. You know what I mean? But it's I don't know. It factors into a lot of different stuff is all I'm trying to say.
yeah. 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 I don't really know what else to say
Right.
about the Bible, actually. I mean, like I said, a lot of stuff has my views on the Bible really haven't had dramatic changes. Um, I don't feel like it's still complicated. My relationship with the Bible is still complicated.
That's actually, now that you're saying that, that's actually what me and Imaginary you thought about. Part of it
Oh, okay.
was because your views haven't changed much. And I was like, how? How have your views not changed much? Like, it's, are you not looking at this stuff? And I know you are.
Well, like I think one of the reasons it hasn't changed as much for me as it has for you is because I think our views of Jesus have changed.
I mean, that definitely is something I was thinking about through it. Like, I would probably frame it differently than you just because we're in different places. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a common theme, common factor.
Because for me, that still holds true. The fact that like Jesus is the lens. Like because of who I believe Jesus to be, Jesus is the lens. The if I read something in one of the epistles and I'm like, I don't sound like Jesus really to me, I'm gonna be skeptical that like either the author was smarter than me and is trying to portray something that I'm not picking up on, or maybe they just was wrong, or maybe they were addressing some sort of specific situation
Right.
that just isn't uh, like they're just doing the best they could
Yeah.
for their time and their whoever they were talking to, like for like the First Timothy stuff I sent you the other day, like the idea that it does make a kind of sense if you're talking to a very specific small church community, like home church community, and you're talking about like if you are talking to a group of people that literally don't have the resources to just be giving like you have to have something to give something.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like if what it was about the treatment of widows and like how to whether you're going to care for widows or not, how you're going to care for the widows, and it was much more restrictive than what it seems like Jesus
Yeah.
would have or did show us how to treat people that were in need. And so I think you have a contradiction between what the author of First Timothy is saying there and what Jesus is saying, unless you just acknowledge that he's writing to very specific people with very specific circumstances, and that they're trying to establish some sort of like um they're trying to figure this whole church community thing out, and how do we exist as a community? How does the community continue to grow and continue to exist given our circumstances? And like they're making decisions like that to like, well, for the sake of the survival of the community, we might have to be more choosy about who we're going to help and not help in this situation. Now, again, it still causes me a
Right.
kind of tension between that and what Jesus says. But like, so in that instance, what am I going to do? I'm going to acknowledge that, like, I understand why this would be written to these people for this reason, but ultimately, I'm going to go with what Jesus said.
Right. Yeah, I actually don't think that's something we see differently. Really. That's what I would do with it too. Though I think you would just do a little more with it than I would, because I would just look at it and be like, yeah, I don't think this agrees with Jesus. Okay. Like I don't feel a need to try to wrestle with it to like um I hate to say, because every time I say it, I feel like you take something away from it. But like, I don't feel a need to explain it away. And then I don't mean that in a negative sense, but like, I do feel like there's a certain amount of that, like what you're talking about, where you kind of have to wrestle with, like, well, what is he trying to say? Because it's not lining up. But I can't just be like, well, he just didn't know what he was talking about. So I've got to try to get to the bottom of how do I apply this, or you know what I mean? Whereas for me, I don't have that problem anymore. It's just like, yeah, I don't think this agrees with Jesus, so I don't really care. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and it's definitely not a trying to explain it away thing. It's a trying to like just make sure that I'm not missing something here.
right.
I don't
And
think
that's
that's
that's why I hesitated to use the word, because I just didn't know a better way to say it. But I don't mean that you're just like trying to gloss over it or explain it away. But like, it causes you, because of your view of scripture, you have to wrestle with that and figure out like what's going on there that I don't.
well, I mean, if we're gonna read it, I don't know why you wouldn't at least give them the benefit of the doubt and try and understand what they're saying rather than just,
Why?
I mean, what? I mean,
Wow.
if you're gonna go through the trouble of reading it anyway, why would you read anything if you're not gonna try to understand what it's saying? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why even read it?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's-
I mean, unless you're gonna go to that extreme and say we just shouldn't even read it, then like I don't. If you're gonna read anything, whether like literally anything,
right.
a bill that comes in the mail, like anything that comes in, if you're gonna read anything, you got to be reading it to try to understand what it's saying.
I mean, I do like, I guess to be more succinct in the way that I would handle it, like when I could bump up, I think that there are some things in the New Testament and the Old Testament that bump up against what Jesus say, that contradict like not just what he says, but the trajectory of what he's saying, right? Like I can apply, he doesn't have to, in my opinion, have to say something outright for me to know, right? Like Jesus never condemned slavery, but I don't think that slavery is compatible with the Jesus way. You know what I mean? So he didn't have to outright say that. I can see how things do and don't line up with the teachings that he said. Um, so if I come bump up, I think that there is stuff in the New Testament and the Old Testament that bump up against it. And if I bump up against it and it's contradicting what Jesus said, it's just okay. Like I'm concerned with what Jesus said here. You know what I mean? Like I think, but it is because I think that this is, to your point, like it was a letter written to specific people. This is a human being who really like wrote a letter. He just was doing his best. You know what I mean? Like, but that doesn't mean I think like that's just a different view of scripture that I have. I no longer view it as a thing where I can go line by line, verse by verse and say, well, this is uh, the word of God. Like, I just don't believe that anymore. You know, like I think that there are lines in there that just, that people, I said it a while ago, miss the boat. I mean, but that's what I, and that's probably a better way, because I think the last time we talked about this, I used like the whole magic book language, and that's sort of what I was talking about. Even though is where like I just see it as it's just a human written book, a conversation about who God is. Like I think that when I used the last time we talked about that term magic book, that's what I was getting at. Was it like, even though it was written by humans, it transcended humanness, and like there's like, no, I think sometimes the human being came through there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a letter. We're reading somebody's mail, like you said.
Yeah, maybe.
And that's why I don't feel a need to, like, I think that there are times it bumps up to Jesus, and I don't feel a need to really go much further than that, just to say, well, I'm with Jesus. That's my lens.
Yeah. I mean, the question for me is, if the humanness shines through, does that disqualify it from being the word of God?
I don't use that word.
I'm not comfortable saying that personally.
Yeah. I don't. For that reason, I don't use that phrasing. I don't refer to it as that anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it stands up to that anymore. Like that, the more like that's kind of this is a recurring theme that we've talked about a lot, but I don't remember what we've talked about on air and off air. But like I've said to you previously, like the more I learn about it, the more I read it, the more I study it, the more like it seems like my view gets lower, and that's what I'm getting at. Is like, yeah, I just don't think it stands up to that anymore. Like, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
See, it's funny that you went where you did with the whole like difference in Jesus, because I actually think that that's something that we share. You just probably take it a little further than I do, like as far as the stuff that seems to contradict what Jesus is saying, you know. I was viewing it from a perspective of, because you hold certain views of Jesus, you sort of require it to, you have an incentive for it to say certain things. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know if you would say this now, because but you said it to me before, and I know that like it's been a long time, so you probably would even disagree with this now. Maybe, maybe not, but you can correct me or whatever. But I know before we had talked about the Old Testament, and you were kind of comfortable with it being just like, not history necessarily, not, some of it's maybe just stories, maybe loosely based on history, but you'd said when it comes to the Gospels, this has to be history. You know, like you're far more uncomfortable saying this didn't happen, this is just a story, than you are the Old Testament. And I think that's because you have certain views about Jesus that require you, or I don't want to use the word require, incentivize that feeling that I don't have. Like I don't have to hold that, because it doesn't disrupt my view of Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to word it in a in a way that doesn't offend you, because I don't mean it in an offensive way. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, basically where I'm at with that right now is that I don't have access to any Jesus. Even if I wanted to say this Jesus that dwells within me, the spirit that dwells within me, even if I wanted to say the mind of Christ, all of that stuff, like even if I wanted to talk about that, I don't I don't know how to relate to that thing in me aside from the Jesus that I read about in the Gospels. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, if it wasn't for that, I don't know that I would even know or think that there was something that dwelt within me. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, my belief and my hope and my trust and my faith is in Jesus as the Gospels present him. Now, whether you could actually prove that everything that's written in the Gospels is true of the historical Jesus, I don't know.
Right.
And I don't really bother myself thinking about that too much, honestly. Um, my faith, my belief is in the Jesus of the Gospels, as presented in the Gospels. So whatever you make of that, or whatever you call that, that's that's basically where I'm at.
Yeah.
It's not a denial of the history, but it's also not a insistence that we can 100% prove that Jesus actually, that everything that's written in the Gospels actually happened historically. Like you could take a video camera back and
Right.
tape it, and we could watch it back, and it would be exactly.
Well, I mean, I think that a good example of what I was trying to get at that was maybe would have been more clear to lead with is like, let's just say like the virgin birth. To me, it's not something I believe in. It's not, I don't think it makes any sense. It's like, but you accept that, and it's what the Matthew says, or Luke, or both. Can't remember, but
I think it's both.
anyway, um, but yeah, I mean, so like, I would say the fact that you believe it to be true, probably, even if subconsciously, does uh factor into the way that you read that. Like to where I feel like I don't have that need for it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to, because just because I don't, it's not that big a deal to me if that's true or not. Like, I feel like because you have a certain view of who Jesus is, that is an important aspect of who he is. You know what I mean? So, like, it's kind of important for you to hold to that. I think you would agree.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess that is what it means for me to say when I say that.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in the Jesus as presented in the Gospels. That's part the
Yeah.
virgin birth, resurrection, all those things are included in that.
Right.
So,
So that's really what I was trying to get at, as far as like we have a different way of like what a different that influences the way that we read scripture and what we hold scripture to be, right? Because like you have more of a, I hate to use the word need, but I just don't know of a better way. Like you have more of a need to interpret those things in a certain way than I do, because I don't hold to those things. And so I think that sort of influences the way that we read and hold the scriptures differently.
maybe I would quibble with that some, but I mean, I don't, because I don't think it's. I guess I guess I actually don't understand. Maybe I don't actually understand what you're saying because, like, I don't know that there's a need for, like, what are you trying? What are you saying that the need is?
So it's easier for me to let go of this idea of, to use your language that you used a while ago, the word of God, right? Like it's easier for me to just be like, well, this is written by human. It's for me what these things are it's a human conversation about who God is, right? But because you hold certain things to be true that, or again, are based on the gospel, right? This has to be true, or your entire thing, it's harder for you to just be like, well, maybe they just missed the boat. It's just a human conversation. Like you need for it to be the divine word of God, because because a lot of, essentially, I would argue, your entire theological framework is built around what it says, right? You need that assurance.
Mm. I think I need the Jesus of the Gospels to be true, maybe, but I don't know that that necessarily means that I have to have that same view of the old and new, like pre and post Jesus, pre and post Gospels necessarily.
Well, and that may be true too. I just know that you had said that in the pre. That's why the reason why I brought that up is because you'd specifically said that to me in the past. Was like you were more comfortable with explaining away some of the Old Testament stuff as just like stories, but you got more uncomfortable when it came to the Gospels, because like, well, if we're trying to say that the virgin birth was just a story and wasn't literally true, then that kind of changes things for your Christology, right? Like if we're trying to explain away the resurrection as just a story and it's not literally historically true, that changes things for your Christology, right? So, like,
Yeah, I mean, basically, I like I said, my position now is basically like I don't worry myself too much with the historicity of it because I just don't think we can prove any of that.
Right.
Like it's, I mean, if now I will admit that if we could somehow, if there was some way for us to actually conclusively disprove the virgin birth and the resurrection and the crucifixion, all the stuff based on like we could actually disprove it
Yeah.
with like facts, like then that would cause me issues for sure.
Yeah.
That would. I'm not going to say it wouldn't. However, I don't think that we can. And
Right.
it doesn't. So it's not something, it's not, and there's no sense in worrying about it if like, I just don't think we can prove that.
Yeah, I mean, and the point's not really to argue the true, like, which position it's better. It's just that we were talking about our differences, and you had said that you thought that one of the big differences between the way that we read the Bible or the way we hold Scripture is our different views of Jesus. And that's, I'm agreeing with you, but pointing out in a different way, right? Like, you used the example that Jesus is your lens, and I don't think that's actually a difference between us. Like, Jesus is my lens, too. I think that one of the bigger differences is actually, like, like the view that you hold of Jesus as literally the incarnation of God. Like that is the difference between, because that factors into so much of the way that you read scripture hinges on that, I guess is what I would say. um
Well, it definitely plays into how I
yeah,
read scripture.
so I think that the only point I was trying to make was that's a difference. Like, to me, that's what as I was running this morning thinking about the difference, that was one of the things that came up, was like, it's just like you have a different view of Jesus, who Jesus was, and like that's influences the way that we read scripture, like,
Yeah. Yeah. But for both of us. Yeah.
yeah, that's the point. Whether, which one's right, which one's wrong, I don't know. Like, obviously, if you think you're right, I think I'm right. You know what I mean? So it would be pointless for us to squabble back and forth on it, um but yeah.
Yeah. I just haven't been convinced by any, I just haven't found any arguments against believing those things other than, I mean, obviously there's the sort of logical problems of like accepting paradox, but I mean, aside from that, like as far as like I haven't listened to a single like critical scholar and been like, you know what, they convinced me. This is wrong. I just haven't found any of the arguments convincing. None of the mark and priority stuff is convincing to me at all. Like some of the um stuff, like various different theories of like explanations for the resurrection or the virgin birth, and like none of that stuff is just like really super convincing to me. But so yeah, I mean that's where I'm at with it. But
I'm not arguing with you about it. Like, I don't want to change your mind on it or anything. Like, that's not my I don't care.
yeah, I mean we were just talking about it.
Yeah. I'm just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that actually is another interesting thing that goes back to what I said earlier about just the things that are so clear to you and that's so clear to me, and they can be so different, like that cause that chasm, right? Because like my approach to that is just wholly different, right? It's like you haven't been convinced that you haven't come across an argument that would convince you that Jesus wasn't born of a virgin, right? And like my approach to that is just wholly different. Like the claim in and of itself is outrageous. Like, I don't need to be convinced it didn't happen. I need to be convinced it did. You know what I mean? Like, it's it's just a wholly different. And I haven't come across any good reason to believe it, to be honest, for me personally. You know what I mean? Like, the same with the resurrection. Like, it's the fact that we're talking about a human being that died for 3 days and came back to life. I don't need to be convinced it didn't happen. I need to be convinced it did. That's just the difference between us, and I don't know why that is. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah, I mean I don't really know what else to say about it, I
yeah,
guess.
that actually wasn't even on the agenda today. Not that we ever have an agenda, really, but
Yeah, it's certainly not something I've really been thinking about much today. I know you said you'd been thinking about the Bible and stuff. I mean, I guess I have too in a certain sense, but like I haven't really been thinking about necessarily our differences with it. Been more thinking about like what do I think about it?
Right. Well, that's really been the crux of my conversation too, or my conversation. That tells you how crazy of a person I am because I'm having
Mhm.
conversations in my head. But that's really been the crux of my thoughts on it too. Is like what, but I think it's in probably within the last week or two, it has shifted a little bit because like I'm actually pretty comfortable with what I think about it. The issue comes in having conversations with like you about it or with other people about it. You know what I mean? Like interacting in Sunday school when we're talking about, when for the millionth time someone brings up how if Saul would have just genocided all the Amalekites, he wouldn't be in this problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
coming across like things like that. That is like, I don't even know how to, like, I'm comfortable with what I think about the Bible, but how do I interact with anybody else who doesn't see it the same way I do? That's has sort of been the shift in it recently for me within the last week or so.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an issue for me too. I think that's an issue for a lot of people. People that you would think, how am I supposed to have a conversation with this person? They're probably thinking the same thing about you,
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
so I mean, it is just yeah, that's just a matter of like community. Like if you're going to exist in this community with each other, how do you make those kind of things work? Like
Yeah.
that's
It's just funny enough because I've seen some videos actually just today on TikTok where it was from people who were like either not believers or like more critical of religion and like trying like the videos themselves were about like how they try to have conversations with people and people are just like lobbing Bible verses at them and it's like do you what like okay like let's have a conversation. Like, we have different views of the Bible, so you just lobbing the clobber verses at me, is it going to change anything? Like
right. Yeah. Yeah, I actually have speaking of conversations, I've had conversations with chat. Not you in my head, but with chat about how to engage in those types of like conversations with folks that like we just disagree with.
yeah,
And I'm not super good at the things like all the things I said was like pretty like common sense stuff actually. Like made a lot of sense. It was just implementing it is harder. It's easier said than done.
yeah, that's it's easier in my head than it is trying to articulate it out of my mouth, that's for sure. Also, I've said a million times that I need to really run right before we because that's when I think my clearest. I wake up in the morning, I drink 2 cups of coffee, take a deuce, go run. You'd never think clearer the rest of the day. Like that is the time to think clear. By this point in the day, I've done been working for 8 hours. I've been up since 4 a.m. My brain is barely even working. Like,
Yeah.
but it is hard to articulate some things. I really don't. I kind of joke that I have arguments with the imaginary you in my head, and we really don't. I don't like actually have arguments in my head like some kind of crazy person, but I do like think back to some of the things that we've talked about, sometimes even years ago, and like think through like different like how I would respond to it now or like sometimes I think about things I would like to say to you but by the time we actually get to talk it's completely gone from my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have actually had arguments with you in my head.
I mean I'm not saying I have never done it but I joke around about the
Yeah. You know what? You always end up thinking I'm super reasonable and agreeing with me somehow in my head. But in reality, that never works out.
sometimes yeah because I'm never wrong.
Hmm.
Sometimes I actually do sort of like have if I especially if I know what our topic's going to be, I'll like kind of like try to organize my thoughts on things that I want to say, and so I'll like mock conversation the whole thing while I'm running, and then by the time we talk, it ends up not being anything that I rehearsed. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, ha- it is a hard thing to try to have those conversations whenever you have very different views of even what the thing is and how to use the thing that you're talking about.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I've noticed is difficult about having conversations like when me and you, and when we disagree, is like I don't know what's going on in your head. Like I only know the things that are coming out of your mouth, and like I interpret that and make a judgment based on that, but I don't know really what it is that you're thinking, right? Or how you've worked out all this stuff. Like I'll just tell you, this is something that is a recurrent argument that I have with imaginary you, but it's because a lot of times I feel like you're like super conservative, not in the like political conservatives kind of way, but like when it comes to politics, you're like super conservative as far as like I want to make sure that I get all this information. And you're like super cognizant of like propaganda and like almost to the point of like too far to me, where it's like, come on, man, one side's a Nazis and one side's aren't. Like, come on, dude. Like, but then I feel like you're completely the opposite about that with religion, right? Like it's like it's some of the stuff it seems so obvious to me, right? Like it should at least give you pause that like the Roman Empire is the one that crucified Jesus, but they're also the Holy Roman Empire. Like, should we not at least pause and question and be like, should you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and that's a recurrent argument that I've had with you. But even saying that, it probably like I don't know what's going on in your head. Like that's just me perceiving things that you've said as though like you're super conservative when it comes to politics and stuff like that. As far as like not like wanting to hear all sides and think through things, but it seems like you're just super willing to accept things religiously. But that's me making a assumption, a judgment without understanding how things come across in your head. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, it is just different, I think, for me, politically than it is. I mean, I think it should be. I think your religion and your politics should be different. I mean, in the sense of like, when I say different, I mean like I've never like been um I've never had a religious experience. Like I've never like that experience that I've the experiences I've had with like presence of God, like feeling the presence of God and like feeling like I've received words or and there's there's been just like spiritual experiences like I've had those kind of things like there's it's not just a purely informational I'm taking in information
right.
trying to get an unbiased view of all the information, all of the relevant data, and then making a decision based on that. There's other things that factor into this.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to say, though, is like I'm not in your head. Like I've never had those experiences. So the only thing that
Yeah,
I have to go off of is like making a judgment based on the things that you've said or the things I've read, or you know what I mean. So like that's exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah,
And so it's difficult having those conversations when I'm not in your head. Like I don't know those experiences, and even if you tell them to me, I didn't experience those experiences. You know what I mean? So it's different. Like
yeah,
that kind of thing makes these conversations difficult because I it I can't have those experiences. I can only make a judgment based on my interpretation of the things that I understand and hear, which even that is just an interpretation, right? Like I don't even you can say something and I could take away something totally different than what you actually mean from it. I've done that a million times. Where you'll say something just in passing and that's the one thing from the whole conversation that latches on for me. Like how many times
right,
has that happened, you know?
yeah,
So it makes communicating these kind of things difficult.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do try to be pretty measured, and I really do try to see both sides of anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that re as far as like my spiritual, like religious beliefs, my views about Jesus, like there is a lot more at stake for me there. I guess, than like there is for me politically, because like it is the I don't know how else to I don't really know how to say this. It's basically like my entire identity almost is how I understand God and myself.
Right.
Like that. I mean, and so it is a question of it's some that's why it's and I mean that's just true for everybody. That's why these things are hard. That's why deconstruction is so soul crushing sometimes, because like
I have to remind myself of that all the time.
because it is such a we're talking about your whole identity of like the kind of person you are. Like there's so much involved in all of that. Like
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I have to remind myself of that all the time because it's easy for me, as someone who's been through it for years and multiple times, it's easy for me to be like, freaking come on, dude. Like, with anybody. But like, I have to remind myself all the time, like, no, it's a very hard use your language, soul crushing thing. So,
but it's like I mean literally the my hope, my faith, all of that is bound up in my beliefs. It's bound up in the things that I believe to be true about Jesus. And because the scriptures witness to him, that means certain things about how I read the scriptures. And so, yeah, it all ties in together for sure.
that's a theme that we've talked about a lot too, actually, how everything seems to tie together. Like, you really can't say one thing without it affecting everything else.
Yeah. I don't know. I never remember this quote. I always think of this quote and I never remember how it's actually said. And I shouldn't even brought it up because I really don't remember it.
Who said it?
I think it was from one of C.S. Lewis's books, maybe. His character, one of his books. Um,
I haven't read any C.S. Lewis, so
I actually haven't read it either, but I've heard people talk about it, and the quote always stuck with me whenever they've talked about it. You would hate it.
makes sense.
I don't know if you would hate it, but it was probably something from. You know what? Maybe I'll try and look it up.
You do that. You know what's funny is, like you said, you'll hate it, and I know you were just joking, but like people probably do get the sense of that because some of the even this conversation that we've had has sort of been, I don't know, like to get woo woo with it, like the vibe has been a little bit negative, right? It's like, but actually, I find truth in Christianity and in the Bible, and as much as I do anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, I know that you were just joking that I probably would actually like it, maybe for different reasons. I don't know. Maybe I would hate it. There are some things I hate, but you know what I mean. Like earlier today, when I asked what we were going to talk about, you had said that your mind was on randomly was on Satan and and demons. And at my first initial response, because you followed that up with like, it's probably is not interesting to you at all. And my first initial reaction was like, yeah, that to me that's silly. Like I don't care anything about that. And then I was like, no, I mean that not really. Like I don't believe in the Satan, this fallen angel Lucifer. Um and I don't believe in literal demons that are like the army of this fallen angel named Lucifer Satan. Um but I do think that they're representative of like truths, like, and we can dispute or discuss or debate what those things are, as people have for centuries, right? But um
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I mean, to some people, they would just hear he doesn't believe in the devil. He doesn't believe in Satan. It's like, well, in a literal sense, no, but like, yeah, I do believe that those are part of the story. They're personifications of a deeper truth. Even though I don't believe in like a fallen angel named Lucifer, Satan, like I do
Right.
think that it is representative of. I mean, generally the way I understand it and interpret it is separateness, right? Trying to be your own god, trying to be individuality, I guess perhaps is the way I would say it. Like in the Talikian model, sort of trying to rely on oneself to exist separately from the ground of being. Like trying to segregate oneself. Um, so like even though I do find like to a fundamentalist, I may be a heretic, but like I still find some truth in that story. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to get at. Is like I still find truth in a lot of the stuff, just not the same kind of truth. It's just the kind of conversations that we have. Sometimes it can come across as like, well, I just don't believe in anything. I'm just a negative Nancy about everything. Like that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know where to go because the quote feels a little out of place now.
Oh, you're welcome. I was just trying to fill time until you pulled it up, and now look what I've done. Look what you did, you little jerk.
It's all good. Yeah, the Demon and the Hasatan thing is it's kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is.
I really don't think though that like if I really think that the my views on it, like what how it affects our lives and what we do about it, I don't think any of that changes whether we're talking about fallen angels or your own fallen mindset.
Where did they fall from? The sky? Just, just asking these questions. These are the questions I have.
From grace. They fell from grace.
Okay.
You know, I don't know where is grace. I don't know.
So grace is limited. It's something that you can fall from.
I guess I don't know. Oh, grace.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm all
To
grace.
be honest, I haven't really thought. I haven't thought about demons or the devil existing in like a literal fallen angel sense in so long. I don't even know. Like you're saying that you don't think it matters one way or another, and like I've just taken your word for it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, like I guess what I mean by that is like I've personally never had any sort of like anything that I would call demonic possession or satanic anything that wasn't something that was like an internal thing to me. You know what I mean? So like I mean I don't think that like and I mean all of the weapons, quote unquote, the armor of God from Ephesians 5, like all of those things are things that are like internal to you. It's like
Right.
all of them are things that affect you and your perspective on life and the way you see things and the way you're hearing things and like the way that you're acting in relation to those things. And it's about truth and opposition, believing the truth and walking in the gospel of peace. Like all those things have to do with like having the right mindset and living it out. Like, and so I mean, if that's what we're talking about with like the armor of God, then I don't know that that's matters whether the devil's like right there or in here or the demon is out here or in here. You know,
Yeah. I hear you.
If the weapons are the same regardless,
Right.
you know.
I feel what you're putting down.
But I do think it maybe matters in some instances, and I think the the story of Legion is maybe a good example of why I think it can matter. Um, like, and we talked about this a little bit before we got started, but like, in that story of Legion, like as soon as Jesus steps foot on the shore, the this guy runs up to him, like he seems like he's like actually like desperate to be set free, like he's in bondage,
Right.
but the the he's possessed, right? Uh, bound by the demonic. But what have the townspeople done? They have excommunicated him. Um, they have tried to put him in chains. He keeps breaking the chains, but they have essentially probably with good intentions. They probably wanted to try to keep this guy from hurting anyone or hurting himself.
Right.
And so they have excommunicated him from the community. They've um, tried to chain an already bound man for the sake of their community, for the sake of their safety. Like, but what is this guy? What is his reaction to Jesus? It's one of like desperation to be set free, and the conversation with Legion and the whole like, have you come to torment us before the time, and don't put us in the pit. All that's interesting stuff, but like for me the main things that have stuck out to me as I've been thinking about that story today, really, I guess, is how I do think there's a difference between the way the satanic and the demonic operate and the way that they present themselves. Because I think that the demonic, no one's going to look at this guy who's like running around naked, crazy, like cutting himself, like living in a grave. Like no one's going to look at that guy and be like, you know what? That's an angel of light. Like, no, it's pretty obvious this guy's life has not turned out the way it should.
Right.
This is a dark situation.
Right.
Like, the demonic is presenting itself in a way that's clearly darkness. It's not masquerading as an angel of light. But what the townspeople have done is well intentioned and doing what seems to be right. They have taken a man that was already bound and excommunicated him from the community and tried to literally put chains on him and bind him and keep him at arm's length, keep him out here where they feel safe and they feel in control.
Right. I mean, it's the same as like the Levitical law, right? If someone's unclean, the lepers keep them outside the gates, like out,
Right.
shun them out.
But what you miss in that is that the satanic is at work in the people. Like the demonic is taking over this guy's life, but the satanic manifests itself in the townspeople and their reaction to him. I think, because what does Jesus do? Jesus sets the guy free. And like it just does make you wonder, like, what could the townspeople have done? What did they try before they were like, this guy's crazy, we need to like kick him out, put him in chains? Like, did they try to like invite him to their home? And
The funny thing is where my mind went was actually a Bible verse. Well, you know about that, but it's one that we used to quote all the time, but we haven't said it in a while. But it's the goodness of God that brings people to repentance.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
That's what
mean,
sets people free, right? Like it's not
right, yeah,
ostracizing people, judging people in this sense of the story that we're talking about, chaining someone and ostracizing them, but even in a literal sense of our day to day life, right? Like shunning those people. Those people are of the world. They're dirty. They're different than us. Like you can't associate with those kind of people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah,
but it's the goodness of God that sets people free, that brings about repentance. That it's, I mean, I firmly believe that. I believe that that's the example that Jesus set. Right? He didn't refuse, like the Pharisees refused to commune with the people that they thought were sinners. You know, Jesus ate with those people.
right.
So,
Yeah, and changed their lives. Like brought sozo wholeness,
right,
set them free,
right,
you know. And so what and it may be that someone does have to be for a time, it may be that there is a time and a place to um have someone be separated for a time being, and then but only with the point being to reconcile.
right. The end goal. Yeah. I mean, an obvious example of what I think you're trying to say there is like someone who is a dangerous, violent criminal who, in today's society, needs to be put in jail, let's say, because they pose a threat to themselves and others,
Right.
literally.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do any good for that person to just lock them in jail and throw away the key, right? Like we should be working towards rehabilitation. And maybe, I don't know if that person can be rehabilitated or not, but we should be trying, I think, right? Like, and I think that's what you're getting
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
is like, yeah, maybe that person does need to be, to prevent them from hurting others and themselves, they do need to be set aside for a while, but only with the end goal being full sozo, wholeness, rehabilitation, you know?
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to point out in that Legion story is like he's the guy that they've put out. But it shouldn't have ever been a thing that was a permanent situation. Like it wasn't the solving of their problem.
Right.
All it what it actually was bringing it brought a sort of order to the chaos that they were experiencing in their community, but it brought a false order because it that story, if Jesus doesn't come and set this guy free, that story probably ends with this guy just forever separated from this community.
Right.
He's never brought back into the fold. He's never restored and made whole.
Right. And which is interesting to me in that regard is that we always sort of think about sozo, right? Or salvation, wholeness being as an individual thing, these individuals being made whole. But even looking at it from a more grand scheme, that community is never made whole if even that one person is forever segregated from his community. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So like the the individuals themselves may think themselves whole, but the
Mhm.
community cannot be whole until this aspect,
Exactly.
this person is reconciled into it, you know?
Right. And that's what I think. That's why I make that distinction, I think, between the satanic and the demonic. Like, I think that the satanic masquerades as light. It masquerades as wholeness. It masquerades as uh, bringing order to chaos, but it's a false order. It's a false light.
Right.
It's not true wholeness. It's not true sozo.
Right. I mean, as we were talking about this before we recorded, I sort of used the example of like holy violence, right? Like there's a way of sort of justifying in our own minds, our own, perhaps to use more biblical language, our fallen state of mind, our fallenness, that we can justify harming other people, shedding blood, going to war,
Mm-hmm.
etc., in the name of God, because it's masqueraded, as you were saying, masquerades as light. We
Yeah.
have in our mind is so twisted that we can pervert it to where it's a good thing. No, it's actually a good thing to do this to these people. You know,
Yeah.
but I think that that's what you're talking about there. Is that that's just it's actually an evil that that's masqueraded itself as light. in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. And that's actually kind of what got all of this started, really, in my own mind. Like it started from Bible study last night, but like kind of the kind of stuff that you're saying right there is kind of, in a sense, it's what got my whole mind rolling on this whole satanic and demonic thing, and how we can be driven by fear to do terrible things, trying to establish order in the wrong way, trying to do the right thing in the wrong way,
Right.
you know. But it was as I wanted to read this. If let me make sure this is actually the right thing. Yeah, this is from 2 Corinthians 2, and this is just another example.
Second corny.
hmm So it says, I guess I'll just start at the beginning. So I made up my mind not to make you. What does this say? So I made up my mind not to make you another painful visit. For if I cause you pain, who is there to make me glad but the one whom I have pained? And I wrote as I did, so that when I came I might not suffer pain from those who should have made me rejoice. For I am confident about all of you that my joy would be the joy of all of you. For I wrote you out of much distress and anguish of heart with many tears, not to cause you pain, but to let you know the abundant love that I have for you. And then verse 5. But if anyone has caused pain, he has caused it not to me, but to some extent, not to exaggerate it, all of you. This punishment by the majority is enough for such a person. So now instead you should forgive and console him, so that he may not be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. So I urge you to reaffirm your love for him. I wrote for this reason, to test you and to know whether you are obedient in everything. Anyone whom you forgive, I also forgive. What I have forgiven, if I have forgiven anything, has been for your sake, in the presence of Christ, and we do this so that we may not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. So Paul is tying this. Someone has done something that has gotten them excommunicated from the community here, to the church at Corinth. And he's writing to them and telling them that this punishment that they've given him of like excommunicating him from the community, that's enough. It's the punishment has served its purpose. It's enough. And like he's inviting them to forgive and console the guy, and to um, reaffirm their love for him. And he says that we do this because so that we may not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. And that goes right along with the the Legion story. The Rather than consoling the guy, rather than seeking to reaffirm their love for this guy, and trying to seek healing for him and wholeness for him, they have settled for they have had been outwitted by Satan and have fallen for his schemes, and we're just perfectly happy to leave this guy out, to leave him out there where they don't have to deal with him. And all of this came about from the whole, like, does it matter discussion, right? And that's why I think it kind of maybe does matter in that sense. Like, this has been a really long way of just saying that, like, I think that if you think that the satanic and the demonic are something out there, then you don't have to deal with it in here. And that's exactly what the townspeople were missing. The people that were perfectly fine to keep this guy in chains outside here where they didn't have to deal with him. The they by putting it, oh, this guy is possessed. This guy's evil. Let's put him out there. By putting him out there, they didn't have to deal with the crap inside of them. And that's where I think it does matter. I think it does matter if we are so busy projecting the demonic and the satanic and the evil out there that, I mean, just like what Jesus says about judging, like the log in your own eye. Like, you got your own temptations to the satanic and the demonic in your own self. Like, there's plenty of things that you want to do that are wrong, or even things that you want to do that are the right things, but you want to do them in the wrong way.
Right.
And we need to be aware of those things. But so if you're constantly projecting the demonic and the satanic as like these other beings that are just they're in other people that's out there, then I think maybe it does matter in that sense.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, actually. Um, yeah, I mean, I would even maybe take it as far as saying I think that the what we would personify as the Satan is just a piece of all of us. Like it's perhaps maybe what we would label as the flesh, living out of the flesh. You know what I mean? Like I think it's just a I mean, obviously in the stories it's a personification of that, but yeah, I think maybe it's in that way it's not just a projection of out there, but you're if you view it through that, you're keenly aware that it's this because that was one of the things that I'd always kind of heard growing up when I thought about like when people talked about the Satan, right, or the devil is like, well, he's not omnipotent, like, or not omnipotent, omnipresent like God
Right.
is,
Yeah.
right? So if the Satan's, he can't be everywhere at once, right? So like I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about the Satan's affecting those people over there. I don't have to worry about him over here. He's not omnipresent, right? No, like I think, nah, I think it's a part of you. Like it's always with you. It's
Hmm.
just, well, I mean, I say always. I would say maybe that's true. Maybe that's something that you can transcend, completely do away with at some point. I don't know. Um, that can be a discussion for another day. But
Yeah.
the point being, I think it's just a natural part of the human condition. It's part of who we are. That you have to always be. That's why I think that we're called to always be cognizant of it, to always be on your guard against the wiles of the Satan. Right? It's because it's
Yeah.
always a part of you. You can never escape it. It's always packed around with you. You always have to be on guard because it's right there, as close as you can be to you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the like the temptation of Jesus, like the temptation in the wilderness, like, and that Hebrews, says that he was tested and tried in every way that we are. And so, like, what it part of what it means that Jesus was fully human is that he had all those things in him that he wrestled with.
Yeah.
Um, Now, how much of it was like it's was a real temptation, but it was one that he overcame. You know, and how I don't know, all that gets the how you work all that out, how much of a real temptation it was could be debated and discussed.
Which one are you talking about? The
Well,
temptation in the
well,
wilderness?
specifically that one, yes. But I mean, even throughout his, I would assume just throughout his whole life. Although, I do think that, we do have a very specific example of it, though, in the wilderness temptation, like the 40 days.
Right.
And, there's an argument to be made about whether he's been tempted this entire time. Like he's just an onslaught of temptation the whole 40 days. And the ones that are written about are coming at the end of the 40 days whenever he's already at this point of like he's been fasting and is worn down, like at his most vulnerable.
Right.
He has these three last final temptations or whatever. That I think you could read that either way. Like, are these the only temptations that he faced? Well, I don't think so. I kind of tend to think that maybe he experienced temptation the entire time he's out there, but then these were like the culminating ones, and basically all of them are like, if we're saying this is the devil tempting him, then all of these are like the satanic. They are what I was talking about with like doing the right thing in the wrong way. Like, it's not wrong to want to feed the hungry,
Right.
but not in a way that is self-serving or um, is putting your needs above the other.
Right.
And not relying on God's provision rather than like forcing these stones to become bread for your own self gratification rather than relying on the provision of the Father. Like,
Right.
all of them have that sort of thing of like, this is a good thing done. The temptation is to do the right thing the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean the easy one is it's one that relates very, very well with our current situation in the
Right.
world, in
Yeah.
the United States of America. But it's the rule of the government, right? Like
Yeah.
all the kingdoms of the world, right? That's Christian nationalism. I mean, you can, and trying to be generous to like the people that I know that more closely align with that worldview. Like I think that most of the people that I know that would have most closely align with that or do so out of a good place. Like they
Yeah.
think that's, of course, we want to implement Christian values, and you know what I mean. Like it's
Right.
done out of a good place in their heart, even though I think it's misplaced. I think that fits in with that story very well. I mean, all the stuff that you're talking about with that is very applicable to the way I read the temptation story personally. Obviously, I think that um, it's yeah, I again, I don't believe necessarily in like an external devil. I think it's just a part of all of us. It's the flesh of us. So I think that that's what's happening there in that story is like he's wrestling. Jesus is wrestling with a part of him. Like, which am I going to live for the spirit or for the flesh? You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's a and in a more literal sense, I think it's based on where it's at in the story and how it all falls. I think he's really wrestling with like, am I who I think I am? Like, like prove it. Like, if you really think you are who you think you are, then throw yourself off the temple. Like, prove it.
Yeah.
Like perhaps, but all that I guess is really inconsequential. The point being that I think it is like it to me it makes the story more effective, perhaps applicable to us for sure if if it is something that he's wrestling with internally rather than like this spirit man thing, devil, angel, messenger, whatever, that comes by and is like gives him three temptations. Like, well, okay, I guess I'll give up and go on.
Yeah. Kind of like the Satan figure in the Passion of the Christ. Remember that?
I don't remember the Satan figure in that one.
Kind of creepy looking. It was like a really pale, bald lady
Oh, nice.
that like had like a what like had like a robe and like a hood and stuff, and was like just like in the scene where Jesus is being crucified, like they're like yelling crucify him, whatever. Like it has this like Satan figure like moving around through the crowd and kind of like moving around sort of like slitherily,
Yeah.
like the movements are supposed to like mimic that of like like a serpent kind of like slithering around through the people, like whispering things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
I prefer the Gavin Rossdale Satan from Constantine.
I've never seen that.
That's a good one. I really like it.
Hmm.
I mean, it's an older one, so I'd probably go back and watch it now and be like, yeah, this is pretty silly. But
Yeah.
I remember liking it a lot when it first came out.
The only thing I know about Gavin Rossdale is glycerine.
Glycerin. He was also married to Gwen Stefani.
Oh yeah, I did know that. Yeah, I was a big fan of Bush back in the day.
Yeah, I was thinking when you said Glycerin, I was like, I mean, that's a good song. I like it, but it's not even close to my favorite Bush song.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's tons of good ones. Come Down's a really good
I
one.
like Come Down Like Machine Head.
Yeah.
I had one of their albums. It was, I don't even remember the name of the album now. It was just a completely gold cover, said Bush on the front in white letters. But that was a banger. Every song from beginning to end was good on that album.
I might have to listen to some Bush on the way home. No. Have you, I think we've talked about this maybe before. I've been watching some of the Necessary Conversation podcast. It's Chad Colchin and his sister, and they
Oh,
have
yeah, yeah,
their
yeah.
MAGA parents
Yeah.
have conversations. Those crack me up.
Oh, man. I want them to crack me up, but I just get so pissed. Get so angry.
Yeah. They're entertaining for sure.
I mean, it is like, yes, it is entertaining, but it is so frustrating because you just know, like, their dad is like, it's not just their dad. He's a representative of like all of our dads. Like, it's like, it's not, I mean, they're all of our dads aren't that extreme, but you know what I'm trying to say is like,
Yeah.
he's a representative of like a huge part of the population. Like, the ones that are like, these people vote, they have a say in the, you know what I mean? And he's
Yeah.
just completely out disconnected from reality in all senses of the word, you know?
Like a living caricature of,
Yes.
yeah.
It's almost like you think that this can't be true, but you know it's true, and you know it's not just him, but like this is a huge portion of our population, like
Yeah.
especially the ones that actually vote. Unfortunately, like for whatever reason, it's the boomers, you know, the older people that actually get out and vote, and then the younger people who have the most future to look forward to, like, are the ones
Hmm.
that don't even actually get out and exercise that. But yeah, man, it is. I seen one today where I can't remember because I want to say now I'm getting them confused because I've seen a few different ones, but I think it was like they were talking about oh, it was healthcare. He was like, you know, what's the son's name?
From the Necessary
Yeah,
Conversation, Chad Colchin.
Chad. He was saying like we're the only country that doesn't have like single payer healthcare, like universal healthcare. We're the only first world country that does not have this. And their dad was just like brought up something about like, well, how's that working out for the? Are you telling me that the thousands of people that the Chinese government murdered had universal health care or whatever? And it's just like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, it's not.
Yeah.
And maybe the Chinese government is out there murdering thousands of their own citizens. I don't know, but like, where are you getting this information from? Like, it's just like a completely pulled out of the air just to justify your own worldview, but it's not like sources or trust me, bro. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly don't pay too much attention to that's one of those shows that like I mean I guess it can be informative, but it's more I watch it more for like an entertainment
yeah.
value.
I don't actually watch the show. I've never watched it. I just see clips of on TikTok.
Yeah. I mean, they are talking about like real issues.
Yeah.
Like the one I saw today, well I mean what was the one I saw today? Today was they were when they were talking about the Trump's 60 Minutes interview. And some of the stuff he said in there was kind of crazy. But we haven't talked any about it. Actually, we haven't talked a lot about very many of the current events going on. I think uh, we didn't record last week,
No.
but like the ballroom and the party that he threw, and haven't talked about any of that kind of stuff. I don't know if we want to or care to, but
I mean, to me, it's just more of the same. Like, it really is just more of the same. Like, am I taking crazy pills kind of stuff, right? Like, because need I rehash that like 80 some odd percent of white evangelicals supported this as like, this is our guy. And like, is there any better like contrast to the example that we see of Jesus than like cutting off SNAP benefits while building a multi-billion-dollar ballroom and throwing a huge party, spending thousands of dollars on it, while like the people that you're supposed to be representing, the most vulnerable of our society, are going hungry. Like, I just cannot. I can't wrap my mind around it, dude. I can't understand.
Yeah. Wasn't the theme of the party The Great Gatsby?
Great Gatsby, yeah.
Which I don't know a ton, so hopefully I'm not speaking out of pocket. Is that the term? But like, uh, isn't that isn't basically the theme of his party elitism? Like,
I don't really know anything about the Great Gatsby. And that's why
maybe I should look that
I
up.
didn't mention that. But to me, it's just the whole thing about it. It's like, imagine though, like Jesus. What would Jesus do? That was our old that was what we grew up on, right? The WWJD bracelets. What would Jesus do? It's like, oh yeah, I think he would probably cut off food assistance to the most vulnerable of our society while building himself a ballroom and throwing a huge party. That seems like the Christ-like thing.
Hmm.
And I get really frustrated. What actually pisses me off about the whole thing is I get really frustrated because then the response to that is like, "Well, I voted for a leader, not a preacher." And it's like, well, no, that literally my whole life you've been telling me the opposite. You've been telling me you've been voting this way because this is the Christian way to vote. That's Yeah. I've been told by countless people that I can't be a real Christian and not be a Republican. So which one is it? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You know?
Yeah.
Are we voting for the Christian candidate or not?
Right. Yeah.
So, like, but part of it really did renew my. I don't want to say renewed my faith. I'm ye of little faith, but it did sort of edify me, I guess is maybe the word I would use. Built me up a little because our church, um, I kind of had already mentioned it. We passed out food yesterday. They put together food boxes to pass out. No questions asked. Just come by. You need food. We got a box for you. And I've seen a lot of stuff where people were bad mouthing the Christian churches about like not providing assistance to people during this time. But ours did right off the bat. And that
Yeah.
that really encouraged me.
Yeah. I mean, there for sure have been churches that have stepped up. There's also been a lot of churches that have not.
Yes.
Um, we've been going for a while. I don't know if I want to open up this can or not. I think you're pretty well always open. This can just always it just remains open for you.
Yeah,
But
probably.
but like
It must be a can of whoop ass.
the folks that are like, well, it's not the government's job
Right.
to feed.
Been hearing that one my whole life.
It's just like, yes, yeah. I mean, I hear you, but also we can't pick and choose. You didn't just say this, did you?
No.
Okay. I was looking something up and thought I was catching what you were saying, but I just wanted to make sure. No.
I mean, I sort of hinted to it when I said, like, people my whole life have been telling me, like, no, they're voting for the Christian
Yeah.
candidate. But then they turn, like, as soon as when Trump is in and doing these pretty obviously antichrist things, they're like, well, I'm not voting for a pastor now. I'm voting for a leader. Like,
Right. But then we can't like if where are we drawing these distinctions is my point. Like when are we okay with trying to legislate holiness and not?
right.
Like when are we trying to find someone who's going to promote Christian ideals and someone who isn't? Like
Right. See, and that's another part of what really frustrates me is because See, I can wholeheartedly disagree. People say it's not the government's place to feed the people. Like I think that's literally the should be the number one thing of the whole role of the government is to provide for the welfare of its people. Like to me that is, and that's not legislating holiness. Like to me that's literally just the point of government is to take care of its people, to provide that safety net for its people, to ensure the well-being of the people that fall under its jurisdiction. Like that should be, in my opinion, the whole point of even having a government in the first place. Like, but playing by their rules, like they want to vote for the Christian candidate. Well, the Christian thing is to feed people. Like, so that from my perspective, that's not even legislating holiness. But if they want to legislate holiness, that's also the way to do it.
Right. Well, that was my point. Like what are we picking and choosing? Like if your whole thing is like, let's vote for the person that's going to promote Christian ideals, well, like which ones? Like, why are we picking and choosing which ones we think are the government's job and which ones aren't? Like, feeding the hungry, that's not the church's job. But like, um, yeah, I don't know, pick it, like literally any other thing, like LGBTQ issues. Like that's why we need to legislate that. Like that's
Yeah, because if we don't, God might send a hurricane and kill us. Don't you know? That's what Pat Robertson said.
right. And like, I don't know. I mean, literally all of those issues are. It becomes a matter of like, well, which ones are we? Which ones are we saying is it's the church's job, and which ones are we saying it's the government's job? Like immigration, uh, the wealth gap, like that disparity. Like what is and isn't the church's job, and what's the government's job?
Right.
Like,
And then the argument could be made that if the church was doing their job, the government wouldn't need to. Like, that's sort of
right,
my whole point when people come to me with that is sort of like, well, we should just do away with SNAP because there's people taking advantage of it, and it's not the government's place. That should be the church's place. Well, then do it. Then feed them. The
right,
whole reason why we need that is because you're not doing it.
right,
Like, if we were doing it, we wouldn't need this. Like,
yeah,
that's kind of was my approach whenever, because you had mentioned, I know, like Christian anarchism, and like that was sort of my initial thoughts to it with what little research and education I have into that particular strand of thought was like, I think that's end goal, but I don't think, like, I think that we're not in a place to make that feasible right now.
yeah. It may be that Christian anarchism makes more sense on the heels of a more socialist era for us. I don't know. I don't know. It would, at the very least, somehow that disparity between the uber rich and the poor needs to be evened out if we were ever going to kind of say, all right, now everybody just take care of each other.
Right. I mean, that's kind of like my response to like when people are more libertarian with like labor rights, for example, or like labor laws. It's like, well, let the free market take care of itself. Well, like we tried that, and that's why we have labor laws. Because without regulation, there was children being sent to work in the mines, and there was no overtime rules. There was, you know what I mean? Like all of these legislations have been put in place because they weren't there before, and we tried to let the free market sort itself out, and it doesn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's sort of that whole thing. Like as long as that dynamic, that power dynamic exists, which really is money, right? Because if you have money, you have all the power. If you don't have money, like you will do literally anything to survive. If that means you have to eat crap for 20 years to survive, you will eat crap for 20 years. Like that's what you have to do to survive. Like
Yeah. Yeah. The whole Christian anarchism thing is something that's been kind of new, something that I want to educate myself more on.
yeah, I actually wanted to. I kind of said that before, and I wanted to reiterate that. It's like I barely looked into it, so those like my thoughts on what I just said were like my initial thoughts, but I'm not near educated enough on it to like give a definitive.
Yeah. There's plenty of people that have written about it. some pretty well-known figures in history. Tolstoy, uh, Jacques Ellul, Dorothy Day.
Yeah, I know Dorothy Day. I knew her. She was a good lady.
She was a good lady.
Yeah, I think so. From what I've read about her,
But essentially, a it's a distrust of the government. Basically, it's basically a a skepticism that any form of government is actually ultimately going to be able to have the power it has and not be corrupted by it. And given that, the best option for us is just to live the kingdom, be citizens of the kingdom, reject. I mean, some Christian anarchists would go so far as to say that voting itself is a sin because it is giving your allegiance to someone other than Christ. Um, I don't know that I would go that far, although I don't know that I'm too far off of that, which we've had that discussion before recently too. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't vote.
right.
I do think that for me, that's actually one of the things. It's kind of like one of those things where, like, you've talked about how you've had a certain view and you thought this way for a long time, and then like you read Tillich and you're like, oh, like this aligns so well with what I've already been thinking.
Yeah,
It's kind of like that with like that's how I kind of feel about some of the things I've been reading about Christian anarchism and hearing about Christian anarchism. It's like that's why I felt like it would have been a sin for me to vote
yeah,
in this past election. I don't know that I could have voted for anyone with a clear conscience.
yeah. See, and I definitely, I mean, like you said, we've already had that conversation, but yeah, I definitely see it differently, but only because I don't necessarily disagree, actually. I just see it a little bit through a little bit different lens.
Yeah.
And I think that that's recognizing that it's different for each individual, right? Because for me, when I cast a vote for somebody for president or for any other party, I don't see it as I'm giving my allegiance to anybody. I don't care. I will criticize the Democrats, the Republicans, or whoever. I do not care, but I still will like try to exercise my vote to put in the person that I think is going to do a better job at. I was going to say do the most good, but perhaps it's more accurate to say do the least damage.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
depends. But like to your point, some people would say it's a sin to vote because you're giving your. I don't see it as giving my allegiance to someone. I'm not giving my allegiance to this person if this person doesn't like. That's what always cracks me up when people talk about like release the Epstein list, and people, some of the Republicans are like, well, what if some Democrats? I don't care. Release it anyway. Like I don't care who's on there. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that no one has my allegiance in that way. Just because I cast my vote, like trying to do the most good that I can with what little voice I have, what little power I do have, if any. Like I don't see that as giving my allegiance to anybody. You know what I mean? So like, but I can understand the sentiment. Like I don't. That's why I said I don't necessarily disagree either. Um,
Yeah. I haven't really done enough looking into it to know why the folks that do make that argument. I'm not sure all of their reasoning for it.
yeah,
It may be that there's just a lot of things I'm missing on it. But yeah, it's not. Yeah, like you said, it is an individualized thing.
yeah,
Like, and there are plenty of Christian anarchists that would say that like it's perfectly fine to vote.
right, yeah,
And I'm personally not saying not to vote, but I am saying that like more and more where I find myself is more in that position of like I just want to be the hands and feet of Jesus the best I can. I want to do the good works that have been prepared for me to do. I want to live in the kingdom right now and give my allegiance to Christ and Christ alone. And I'm probably just going to not vote for a while. But it's not something that I have zero conflict about.
right,
I do have internal struggle about it because part of me is like, if I am, it really comes down to your citizenship. like, are you someone who is like, yes, I'm a citizen of the kingdom, but I'm also an American citizen? Or are you someone who's like, no, I'm just a citizen of the kingdom? I don't know.
See, I still sort of see it as like even though I'm not of the world, I am still in the world, right? Like I'm still, um, and it's not just really the United States because the United States government is to the point where like whatever happens here affects the world. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, I'm. That's what I mean by like I'm not necessarily giving my allegiance to anyone by casting my vote for them, but I do live in the world and like the world that we live in. To me, that's one of the there are other things I can do that don't rely on the government, but that is one thing that I can try to do to help people, right? Is
Yeah.
try to put in candidates that while I don't think you're ever going to find Jesus Christ himself on the ballot, yeah, I think in some instances it's more glaring than others, but I think that there are better choices than than others. So,
Yeah.
but I am not gonna like. With that being said, like I don't think I did this in the last election where you told me you weren't going to vote. Like, I'm not going to try to get you to. Like, yeah, if you don't think it's the right thing to do, then don't do it.
It's a little easier for me also because, like, my vote actually really doesn't matter.
Right.
You know,
And to that point, that is like I know I'm registered with the Green Party, and I've voted, Jill Stein, Green Party, and their candidates more recently because my vote doesn't matter anyway. If I would have voted for Kamala Harris in this last election, she still would not have won a single electoral vote from the state of Kentucky. So who cares? I could have wrote in my own name. It would have not changed a literal thing. So
yeah. I voted for Al Greg.
could have, maybe should have.
I'm Al Greg.
If he ran on the platform of Free Baileys, he's got my vote. But not if he's going to continue to show his mangina.
Yikes. My downstairs mix up.
Yeah, I don't. But like I said, I'm not going to try to convince someone. Like you do what you want to do. You know.
Yeah. Like I said, there is an internal struggle there. Like, part of me does think, like, yeah, of course I should vote for the one who I really genuinely think is going to do the least harm and is actually the most Christ-like out of the two. But then I do feel like, given where we are in the current state of, like, the way our elections are, like, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And that really is the approach I take to it when I cast my vote is I do try like for me in my personal views there's one like while neither side is perfect while none of the candidates like I said are Jesus Christ himself running on the ballot. To me there's a glaring difference between one side and the other. There's one side that is obviously more non-Christ-like that's causing a lot more harm to the least of these specifically. And so like I'm going to do what I can to try to make sure that those people don't have any more power than they already do. Even if it means nothing and it doesn't count for anything, I'm going to try and do what I can.
I would be far more likely to vote for a third party than for either Republicans or Democrats at this point. But anyway.
I mean, to that point, I would argue that the whole system itself is broke.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
what are you going to do?
We're just going to sit in my basement and complain to the camera about it.
Drink Baileys from a shoe?
I don't have any Baileys. I do have some just regular old coffee, though. I'm back on my sober living.
I don't know if I've ever had Baileys. I've probably had it in other things, maybe.
Maybe.
Possibly.
I don't know that I've had it either.
Yeah.
Probably have because I've had a lot of alcohol in my life, but
I don't know. But
yeah, I'm gonna trying to be back on track with the sober thing.
I've ate very little the last couple of days. That's
It's
all.
it's really this is probably going to sound woo woo for somebody like me, but it really
Woo woo.
is. Like we had the Halloween party that we went to, and I did drink alcohol at this party a little bit, and and I just didn't like the way it made me feel or act or be. Like I didn't like it. And the next day, I didn't feel good. Like when you've abstained for a little while, you can really tell a difference. And I just didn't like it, which is kind of weird for me. But I don't want to feel like that anymore. So
Yeah.
that's for today. I mean, one thing I have learned, this is going to make me sound like I have an alcohol problem, but one thing I have learned is you can't just be like, you know what, I'm never going to do that again. I'm not going to do that today. So for today, that's where I'm at.
For today.
I can't say I'm never going to drink again because that's probably going to be a lie if I said that, but I'm not going to do it today.
Not today, Satan.
But it really did sort of, the reason why I said it's going to sound woo woo is because, like, in my mind, the only way I know to describe it is it just sort of felt like it lowered my vibe, man. Like, there's something about, like, when you're eating healthy and you're sober and you're in your right mind that, like, makes you just feel like you're sort of high vibrational. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know any better way to say it than that. And there's a certain way of, like, it can be drinking alcohol, or it can just be eating junk food all the time and fast food that just makes you feel blah. It makes you feel like, not just physically, but almost in a spiritual way. It just makes you, like, feel low vibe. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
felt. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't weighed this week at all, but I'm hoping I can break through that my previous goal, or my previous, not even goal, but like just my previous, like my lowest weight that I've seen.
I've sort of still been fluctuating because my whole mind was if I could ever just get below 260, I feel like I'm going to be home free, and I did. But I still can't seem to, like, because to this morning I was 260 exactly. It's like I can't get. I'm within like 258, 258 and a half was like the lowest I saw, which was like 2 days ago, and then like to like 260, 261. Like I'm in that range every day, but I can't seem to just can't get down there.
Yeah.
But I haven't been tracking like I need to this week. It's grocery shopping week. We get paid tomorrow. Tomorrow's payday, so we're pretty low. It's kind of just eat whatever you can find in the cabinet. And
I did have some cheese balls earlier.
it's also just was Halloween, and my son has a million pieces of candy in the house, so that's also been a problem. I need to do something with that.
Toss it in the trash.
Need to,
Get it out of here. Remove the evil from among you.
or I'm going to eat it because I am like a sponge.
Thus saith the Lord.
Doth saith the Lord.
Well, we've been going. This is a long one.
Well, we didn't record last week, man. We had a lot to get out.
Yep.
It was funny because even though we only missed 1 week, it felt like it took us a minute to get going.
Yeah.
It started slow, and then even when we started, I felt like the first half of the whole episode was kind of meh. But then once we actually got going, it was good. It turned out good, I think. Everybody else might hate it, but for me, it turned out good.
Yeah. I I really am tired. Like I don't mean to use that as an excuse, but I really am kind of tired and like having like a hard time.
Yeah.
My mind having a hard time focusing. And
Well, some of the stuff, like the stuff that we talked about at the beginning about like the Bible and stuff like that, that's normally stuff that we would have talked about, and I already would have had it out of my system. And by the time we recorded, it wouldn't have been a thing. But we haven't really had a lot of time to talk. You've been working a ton of overtime. We haven't really done a whole lot of back and forth. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
like, that's normally stuff that we just get out of the way, and then it's not recorded. And like,
yeah,
you know, but
right.
we haven't had that opportunity. So now the world gets to hear it too.
Right.
So
It's probably not a good thing. There's probably some things that are better. I mean, I don't know that we said anything tonight necessarily, but like generally speaking, it's probably a good rule of thumb to like get some things out in private before we
Right.
talk about them in public.
Right. I mean, there will definitely be people that have a negative opinion about some of the things I said about the Bible, but I think some of that which we've said it a million times, and it probably goes without saying at this point, but if not, I'll say it again. That like a lot of the stuff that I say, we're talking about this live. It's not like we pre-planned this. We don't have a script. The next time we record, I might say something totally different. Like that's literally just where I'm at today. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I'm not trying to make any definitive like, this is the hill I'm choosing to die on today. It's just like, yeah, I'm just being open and honest and raw about like, this is where I'm at today, and tomorrow might be different. We might hit the stop record button, and then Sean will say the greatest thing he's ever said and completely change my mind about everything. So,
Dear Lord, baby Jesus, let that be the case.
so anyway,
Yeah.
that's all
All
I've
right.
got. I'm done. I'm hungry.
You hunger? I'm a little bit hungry myself. All right. Bye, kids.
Bye.
Bye.